I have one of my favorite shirts on right now, which happens to coincide with one of my personal favorite memories. Yeah, Jeff Lynne's ELO, or I guess it's just ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. For whatever legal reasons, he has to call it Jeff Lynne's ELO now, but it's ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, Mr. Blue Sky, um, Evil Woman, Strange Magic, uh, Turn to Stone, a lot of good hits. Seriously, they're my favorite band of all time. I was introduced to them mostly through movies because a lot of their songs appear in movies. This is going back a few years, so it's not just because of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 having Mr. Blue Sky. No. But their songs have appeared in a ton of different movies, and at some really random times. Like, Living Thing shows up in Boogie Nights. Yeah, that's the movie. Shows up at the end credits of that movie. Telephone Line shows up in Billy Madison, really randomly. So their songs appear in a bunch of movies, and Mr. Blue Sky, which has appeared in many movies, even before Guardians of the Galaxy 2. But for a long time, I never really connected the dots as far as, oh, these songs, I really like them, but I don't really know who they're by. But they kind of have an upbeat feel, a lot more orchestra behind it than typical bands of that age, where a lot of bands were more heavy on, the guitars and the techno piano and drums and things like that. There was a lot more orchestra to Electric Light Orchestra, of course, which makes sense. But even their first album is almost entirely orchestra, besides a few songs. But and if you listen to things like El Dorado, throughout the entire album, it's just a lot of orchestral pieces put between the tracks. So it's a band that I really like because it's a good mix of everything. It's quirky, it's different. It's influenced by the Beatles a lot. Even Jeff Lynne had worked with some of the Beatles. So it's not like, I'm sure people might kind of dismiss them for that because it does just seem heavily influenced by the Beatles and doesn't seem to be doing anything different except, making new songs and lyrics. But I don't agree. I think to me, I enjoy them better because for their music, I just find that I enjoy listening to their songs more often. The Beatles are amazing, of course, and they also have a wide range of different music that also brings in some different kind of orchestral instruments. But I think I guess number of how many songs ELO made, how many of them I love way more of them than I like of the Beatles, because the Beatles have good hits, but there's a lot of songs that I kind of forget about. So I hope I'm not ticking off any Beatles fans here, because I like the band, but it's ELO is where I'm at. And it just so happened that I became a fan the last couple years, and I always thought, I've never really been a concert guy. I really only started that up in 2019 because I was like, you know what? People go to concerts all the time. I always had this assumption that they're really expensive, but you know what? I'm going to start putting some money towards going to some concerts, and actually started to do that. It's weird because then the pandemic started next year, so I got really into going to concerts and shows. It was the same year I went to Pete Davidson's stand-up and to Kevin Smith when he did his showing of Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I started to go to a lot of live things and I really enjoyed it. But then unfortunately the pandemic started. So even, getting into that, it immediately was done. But luckily, a lot of those acts, like the ones I mentioned, I was able to catch right before the pandemic began. And of course, I was able to see ELO in concert before the pandemic struck. And what's really crazy is that they had not done a U.S. tour in quite a few years. And on top of that, they had not been to Minnesota in decades. Been many, many, many years. So, the tickets at the time were pricey. I had a different job back then. And I really... it was right before I got my better job. So I really was like, I don't really have the money for this, but it's ELO. I can't really miss out. And I have to say, it was totally worth it. One of the best experiences ever. And now I can say at least that I saw Electric Light Orchestra in concert. You know, it's the unfortunate thing is like a lot of people can love bands and older bands especially, but you can't always see them in concert. Like, you can't see the Beatles in concert nowadays, obviously. You can't see things like Led Zeppelin in concert. There's a lot of bands, Van Halen. I mean, like, there's a lot of bands out there. It's like, yeah, it'd be great to see, but you're either getting a mix of more modern performers mixed with the other ones, because some either quit or have passed away. And so it's not always possible to see exactly the band you want to see. And even ELO, there's been different people in and out of it, but for the most part, it's Jeff Lynne's thing. So, you know, seeing him and seeing that, it kind of makes the experience. So I feel very fortunate I was able to see it before the pandemic. Got a chance to, you know, perfect timing to get into this band, and only a few years later they actually have a US concert again. And to see them before, you know, it gets to a point many years down the line where they may not even be a thing anymore. I hope they perform for many, many, many years. And hey, I hope they have another US concert, because I will definitely go again. But, you know, like I said, with these older bands, you just never know. And I feel very fortunate. So, of course, I also got a t-shirt. I pretty much did everything that I financially never do. Buy tickets for something I couldn't afford, and buy a shirt, usually something that I don't really buy at concerts. I always think they're overpriced. Paid for parking that was pricier, but all of it, I didn't care. I had to see them, and was so worth it. I guess the moral of that is sometimes spending the money is worth it. Don't cry over spilt milk, especially if you know you're going to spill it. Just some experiences are worth going all out for, especially before a pandemic. In hindsight, it was perfect timing.